Welcome to C Programming Tutorials. This is a production of YouTube channel Learnorama and the Facebook page Awesome C Programming Tutorials in High Def. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I would highly recommend that you do so that you can be notified of any new tutorials that I post. And I would also appreciate if you could become the fan of the Facebook page as well. Okay, in today's tutorial we are going to learn about pointers to structures. Basically, I had talked about pointers before, about structures before, but I did not talk about structure pointers because at that time we had not talked about pointers at all. So now we are going to talk about pointers, because structure pointers, because we have already learned about pointers. But before we start, if you haven't watched the structures tutorial, I would suggest that you do so. I'm sure the link to the tutorial is on the screen right now. Just click on it and it will take you there. So let's get started. So we had learned before in the previous tutorial that this is how you actually declare or define a particular structure. That you write the keyword struct followed by the name of the structure, and then you define the variables that this structure is going to have, like this, and that's it. And at that point, this can be more than one variables here, and followed by the semicolon, and that basically declares that particular structure that you are trying to declare. Now my phone is ringing. I'm sorry. Okay, so so let's now one thing to note is that this actually defines how the structure looks like. Okay, it doesn't end up in actually creating any variables, not even the variables inside it. Okay, so let's take an example. So let's say if we want to represent a rectangle in our program. Okay, so you have to collect data about rectangles, for example. So you want to represent rectangles in your program. How are you going to do that? The way to represent something is basically represent the information, the basic information about or that is associated with that particular thing. And then for a rectangle, we know that every rectangle has this characteristic of length and width, right? So you have a length and you have a width, and at that point, so with these two values, if you specify these two values for any rectangle, that actually uniquely identifies that particular rectangle. So let's do that. So what are we going to do? We are going to create a structure called rectangle, of course, and then inside it we will have length and we will have width. And what would be the type of length and width? Well, in general, it could be any real number, like it could be 2.5 centimeters by 3 centimeters or 6.5 centimeters by 3.946 centimeters. So in general the type would be float, but just to keep things simpler, let's call it integer. Okay, so let's say the length and width are going to be int. So these two attributes or properties or parameters of rectangle actually determine a particular rectangle. If I give you length and width, you can draw that rectangle, right? Because we already know that what the other things are. Like rectangle has 4 sides, the opposite sides are parallel, the angle between them is between the sides is all 90 degrees and all this. So all this is standard. It doesn't change from rectangle to rectangle. The only thing that changes from rectangle to rectangle is, of course, length and width. So let's see. So now, thing to note again, as I said, this only defines the rectangle. It doesn't declare any variable length, so it doesn't actually allocate any variable length in the memory. It doesn't allocate any variable width in the memory until I declare a variable of this type, struct rectangle. So all it does is it represents the type, a new type that we just declared. Okay. Now, if I have to define a rectangle, say rect1, so this is what I do: struct rectangle rect1. Okay, and if I have to access the members of this rectangle, how do I do that? Rect1 dot length. Now see how editor is helping me. in trying to figure out what could it be? See, it's as soon as I press dot, it basically gives me both of the members defined in this rectangle, length and width, right there. So I could choose one of those, okay? Or if I start writing one of those, it will basically narrow it down to whatever is left, and in this case only one is left, and then if I press enter, it will automatically fill it up. So editor is helping you write the members here, so that's a good thing about the editor. So suppose it's like 10 centimeters, so we say rect1 dot length is equal to 10 centimeters, and the width is same, I don't know, 5 centimeters, so we say rect1 dot width is equal to 5 centimeters. So this is it. At this point, we have a rectangle variable rect1, and it has two member elements, length and width. And if I try to show you how it's going to look like in the memory, so it's going to be something like this: rect1, okay, and then we have two members in it. One is called length, the other one is called width, right? And when I assigned length equal to 10, it basically stores 10 in here, and width equal to 5, it stores 5 in here, okay? This is what it looks like at this point. Now suppose what I do is, instead of defining a variable rect1 or of type rectangle, in addition to doing that, let me define a pointer p rect, okay? And how did we say how we are going to represent or visualize a pointer in our mind? By making a square and an arrow coming out of it, right? And at this point, just by declaring a pointer, it can be pointing to anywhere. So it's always a good idea to actually make pointer equal to 0. That way it is pointing to kind of nowhere, okay? So that kind of pointer is called null pointer, and it is represented usually by putting a across this square, okay? That shows a null pointer. Now let's see if we can make it point to this rect1 variable that we have here, okay? So let's see, how would we do that? Every pointer needs an address, okay? And how are we going to get the address of rect1? Very simple. We use the ampersand operator, and that basically gives you the address of this variable rect1. So this is how we assign prect or make prect point to rect1. So after this statement executes, prect actually becomes, it's not null anymore, and it starts pointing to rect1 or the start of rect1. Now if I have to access the elements of rect1 using this pointer prect, how am I going to do that? I use this kind of an arrow, and see how it automatically helps me again. And I change the value of length to 6. So see, if we have the structure itself, like this rect1, not the pointer, just the structure itself, you use dot to access its member elements, like length and width. But if you have a pointer to a structure, you use this dash and greater than sign together to access its member elements. So you can never ever do this, prect dot length. This is not allowed, okay? This is going to give you an error, okay? Because prect is a pointer. So this is like an arrow which is like pointing to length, right? So you will have to do something like this, and if I have to delete it and access the width, then I can do that. So at this point, the value of length and width in rect1 will change to 6 and 7, okay? And if I print using these using rect1 dot length, it will print 6 because prect actually changed it. I will conclude this tutorial at this point. I hope you understand it. Keep watching the tutorials. Thank you so much.